Hello friends, in this video we are trying to understand .NET Core API implementation and consuming this API .NET Core API into Blazor WebAssembly client. So here .NET Core API is the server, it works as a server, and Blazor WebAssembly works as a client, UI client application. As part of this video, we can also go through few of the commonly asking interview question and answers based on this implementation. So let us getting into details. First, I will run the application and showcase you how this application will work, and then we can go through the code and trying to understand the important steps of this implementation. So now this URL is a .NET Core API URL. It is running under 7242 port and it is running locally. This is a Swagger page to test .NET Core APIs. So here we have three endpoints. First one is get endpoint, and second one is post endpoint, and third one is delete endpoint. So using to do API, we will try to understand how we can implement APIs and how we can consume these APIs from any of the client applications. Let us see this implementation using Blazor UI. In later videos, you can also see how we can consume this API from Angular application. We can also see how we can consume this API, .NET Core API, from React application. So let's see from Blazor application how it is implemented. Here we have a get to do. This endpoint, what it will do, it will fetch all the to do items which are stored in memory. So currently we don't have any to do items, so I'm creating the to do item using post endpoint. So here to do item 1 from API, this is my title and I'm executing. It is successfully saved in the memory. Now I'm creating another item. So here now we have two to do items. Those are saved in memory. If I want to delete any item, we can delete using delete endpoint. For delete endpoint, we have to pass the ID of the to do. So here we have ID. We have IDs 1 and 2. I'm going to delete the second to do item. I have passed 2. This is the ID of the second item, and I have executed. Now the second item is deleted. If we execute again get endpoint, then we can see only one to do item. So this is the way to test from Swagger application, and now we will see from Blazor UI. So this is a Blazor UI which is currently running under 7092 port, and here we are seeing one to do item which is retrieved it from our API, and our API is running under 7242 port. So our client application is running from 7092 port, and our application server application is running from 7242 port. Now I am adding another to do item 2 from Blazor. And if we check it from Swagger whether it is saved or not. If we execute it, we are seeing the second item. So from client also it is working properly. If we want to delete the item, we can delete it. So I have deleted, and internally the delete endpoint called, and the delete ID is passed, and then it was deleted. So if we execute, we are seeing only one to do item. Again, if we are create the third item from API, it will be saved, and we can see the available to do items. Now we will understand the code, how it is working. Let us understand from the API point of view. So these are the important things to be understand while building any API. So the first important step would be CORS. We have to enable CORS. So this is important when we are implementing client server applications. CORS should be enabled, then only our API will be accessible from the client applications. So to enable the CORS, we have to configure add CORS. These two lines of code, two steps of code is required. So we are configuring the CORS and we are allowing through the pipeline, the middleware pipeline, we are allowing it. So this is an important step. And if Swagger is not enabled for any of the .NET Core API, so these are the configuration steps are needed to show the Swagger test case. So here important question would be, what is CORS? CORS is cross origin resource sharing. That means our API is running under 7242 port and our client application is running 7092 port. So our .NET Core application doesn't know about 7092 port. So our .NET Core application, API application should allow the request securely. Then that means using CORS only. If the CORS enabled only, then our API will allow the requests from outside. So this is kind of a browser security. API calls will be blocked based on due to this browser security. We are unblocking with the enable CORS. And the answer would be like, if in an interview, if anyone asking what is CORS, CORS is nothing but cross origin resource sharing. CORS allows front-end applications from different origins to access back-end APIs securely. So this is the way to answer it. And the second thing would be like dependency injection. So in our here in .NET Core API, we have a controller. In the controller, we have three endpoints. One is get endpoint, and the second one is add endpoint, and third one is delete endpoint. So these three endpoints are available from our Swagger case. And how these are working, like our API endpoints are available here, localhost 7242 API to do. This is the API URL, and from that API URL we are going to access those APIs from the client application. So now we have a controller, API controller, and this API controller contains 3 endpoints, and once the request comes to get endpoint, what it will do, it will retrieve the stored to-dos information and return back to the API as a response. So here to-do store is nothing but this to-do store contains a list of items which are maintaining in memory. That means if we stop the application, all the to-dos information which is saved will be cleared because it is storing in memory. If we want to persist the data in database, we should go with the database entity framework model. We can store the data in the memory. Then that information will be stored in SQL Server database or Postgres or any other data store. And when we are calling add endpoint, we will pass the to-do item, and that to-do item will be saved inside the list, existing list, and that will be saved. So while storing the data, we are passing ID, title, and is completed. So these 3 properties we are passing it from the endpoint: ID, title, and is completed. According these property values, these will be saved and maintained, and it is retrieved as well. And the final step would be like we have to-do items, and those are saved using add endpoint, and if anyone is trying to delete the to-do item, delete endpoint will be called, and they will be passed ID, and from the to-do store list, and it is retrieved based on the ID, and it will be deleted from that list. So this is the API. This API works in that way. And the client application, in the client application we have program.cs. This is also .NET Core application, and inside program.cs we have the important configurations would be, we have to do service, and we have to do item which is for payload, and to do UI page, and to do navigation menu item. These 4 things are important. So to show the menu item, we have to add the nav link, and our nav link will be navigated to the razor page, to do razor page, and that to do razor page will be rendered, and that will be showed inside the browser like this. We are clicking to do, and to do URL will be created, and to do UI page is showing here. So that's how nav menu works. And the to do razor page is the UI page. This is the UI page, and whatever the UI page we are going to implement, that will be showed here. And when user clicking add, then on click will be called, and add to do method will be called. This add to do method will maintain the title of the provided title, and it will be called the service, to do service, and to do service will have 3 methods. One is get to dos, and add to dos, the second method, and delete to dos. So internally this will call our API 7242 API which is running. If the API is stopped, this will not work. So that means parallelly our server application, a .NET Core API should run, then only this will work. So our server is running and it is calling the API. Accordingly, that API endpoint will be triggered. So if the user clicking get to dos means when application is loading, .NET Blazor application is loading, at the time by default on initialized async method will be called and it will load all the to-dos. How it will load? Using get to-dos method. Get to-dos method will have, it will call the API endpoint get endpoint. This get endpoint will be called and this get endpoint will be triggered and all the to-do items will be called and it is returned back to the UI and the UI will be rendered. That's how it will work. Similarly, if the user clicks on add to do button, add button upon entering the value, then our API will be called, post endpoint will be called, and that post endpoint internally calls from to do service, and that to do service will pass the payload information and it will call the post endpoint. So that's how it works. Similarly, delete endpoint, when ID passed and that according to the ID the record will be deleted. So here we have the view model to pass the payload and showing the data. For this two things, this payload will be view model will be model class will be available useful, and here dependency injection point would be like in program.cs we have to do service. This is injected and this to do service will be called injected in the razor page using at the rate inject, and this to do service will be accessed through the accessed, and we are able to call the methods, available methods which are available in the to do service. So dependency injection is the technique, important concept. So with the dependency injection we no need to create the services manually. Framework will takes care of injecting the services. Using inject keyword we can inject the service, and the registration step would be the mandatory step to register the service, and this is an important point while explaining in the interview. And what is the benefit with the dependency injection? It will allow us to do the loose coupling, better testing, and a cleaner architecture way of implementing. In .NET Core, dependency injection automatically provides required services through the control constructor. And the two-way binding is a concept which is important. So using bind attribute, two-way binding will work. So that means when we are giving the input here in this control, the two-way binding is saving the data in the title property when according to the input, and this is called bind attribute. Is in Angular we have ng model. The similarly bind attribute will work the similar way. And inject service inject automatically takes care about to do service injection, dependency injection, and the important other step would be on initialized async. On an initialized async is like a page load. It works like a page load. While loading the page itself, we are loading all the available to-dos. And event binding is a technique. On click we have event binding. We are using on click, we are calling a delete to do method and add to do. So we are achieving on click related thing. This is calling it as event binding. And the other final step would be how this is working using HTTP client. HTTP client, this is another best example for dependency injection. So in program.cs we are injecting the HTTP client, and HTTP client will be available through the constructor injection dependency injection model. And using HTTP client we are calling the APIs, external APIs. So this is the way we are calling. So using the important Blazor interview question and answers, like Blazor is a .NET framework for building interactive web UIs using C# instead of JavaScript. And Blazor WebAssembly runs what is Blazor WebAssembly? If someone asks like that, Blazor WebAssembly runs .NET directly inside the browser using WebAssembly. And bind attribute provides a two-way data binding in Blazor. So what is inject? Inject is used to inject services into Blazor components. On initialized async is a lifecycle method that runs when component initializes, and the HTTP client is used to communicate with backend APIs. So this is it in the video. So thanks for your time. In my further videos we can understand the same concept, how we can implement using Angular and using React. Thank you guys.